Craig Martelle, Michael Anderle, thank you for being on the show.
Pleased to be here.
Hey,
And Craig,
thanks for
this
having
is
us.
Yeah, you betcha. Hey, I'm going to start out with, you know, Michael, I'm going to put you on the spot. What was your life like before writing? And we all kind of know who you are now, albeit, I'm sorry, the alphabet soup. Your publishing company that I can read from here, LBPN,
LMBPN, yes.
LMBPN. Before you wrote your first book, what were you doing? What did your life look like?
At that particular moment, um, my wife and I had one kid out of the house. We had a pair of kids that were about in sophomores in high school or so. And I had a lot of time. I had my own company that I had one predominant client. I had been, a reader my whole life, and the things that I was doing had to do with websites. I was very IT background. I was a developer before that. I was a certified Google ad specialist, so I understood the marketing. Entrepreneurialism is something that I had always done, but generally speaking, books and everything else, that was my sense of entertainment. So I didn't watch a lot of TV. I prefer to read books, and I've been doing it since I was young.
Hmm.
So, when you are a voracious reader, you're willing to try a bunch of different authors. And by that time, I had read a bunch of indie authors. And one day I had decided, I could write something this good. So I didn't have high expectations of what I needed to do. But since I was a big reader and I had been in advertising and everything else, I felt that I needed to have at least 3 books in the series out, and then I would be doing the advertising because you could do the numbers and see that one book isn't going to make you the money. So I had an opportunity to write a whole bunch. One of my clients, the main client, was in the middle of some changes at their company, and so they were paying me, but I didn't have anything to do. So I felt like
Well,
I
that's a
had
good job.
yeah, yeah. Tell me about it. Um, so I had time. I figured that window would close. They would get back to me, and so I wrote as I've said before, wrote like a motherfucker, and put out 3 books in the first month, fourth book in the second month, and fifth book in the third month, and Katie Bar the Door was at 10,000 plus in the third month and kept going.
Wow. How about you, Craig? For those folks that don't know who you are, I don't know who that could be, but
Yeah, I retired from the Marine Corps at 39 years old, and decided what am I going to do with my life. So I went to law school, got a law degree, and then went into business
Because that's
consulting.
what people do. Let's go to law
That's
school.
because that's what people do when they retire is they go to law school.
I didn't.
And you should, you could, you
No,
still
thank you.
can. I
Nope.
so as a lawyer, I worked as a business consultant and bounced around the United States from Newport News to central Pennsylvania to Wisconsin to Utah with my one employer, but I was bouncing around the clients because we went on site with the clients. And then I ended up on the North Slope of Alaska, and at 50 years old and broken. The North Slope is pretty harsh because that's inside the Arctic Circle. It's 500 miles from the North Pole, but that's where the oil fields are. So that's where I was for over 3 years, and it just got too much. And so I retired from that, and I didn't need to work anymore. I mean, I had 2 retirements. Life was good. So I was cleaning up my yard, and I lit myself on fire. And
Not in protest of
stop.
anything, or
No.
no.
Stop,
Okay,
stop,
just
drop it.
just making sure.
Yeah. No. Stop, drop, and roll,
Okay.
and put out the fire. And I had second-degree burns on my leg from it. So here I am, and I'm like, okay, I can't be trusted to do manly man outside stuff. So I
Who
said,
gave you
I
a
was like, hey,
gun? The
yeah.
company, the country gave you a
This is
gun,
this is
and
Alaska. This is Alaska. If you're not carrying an arsenal, you're underrepresented. So yeah, I was sitting here. I still have way too much energy. Got a lot of stuff to do. I'm 52 years old. I'm like, okay, I always wanted to write a book. Let me write that book. And I haven't stopped since. That was October of 2015. And so I wrote because I always wanted to write, but I just never had the opportunity. So I gave myself the opportunity by lighting myself on fire, unintentionally, mind you. And I've been writing ever since. And it's a great thing to be able to write, uh, uh, relate to the readers, put good books in their hands, and to be able to give back to the community through with the other authors as well.
so
So it's the
your
best of
options
all
are
the
write
worlds.
or commit flambe suicide.
Right? Or yeah. redecorate my skin.
Okay. Hey, they can fix that now. But Michael, I'm going to ask you a question. What is outlaw publishing? And I was watching a YouTube video and you were on it and you were discussing outlaw publishing. What was your part in that?
Oh, good Lord. I have to figure out what I meant at that time. But effectively, I can only surmise when in my career I said that. But it was
It
an
was early on.
attitude. Yeah, it would have to be. But it was an attitude against what was, everyone understood to be what was proper. When I was coming out with the books that I came out, I was told on one particular infamous writing board that you should never put out more than 4 books a year. And I was planning on doing 12, so there were a lot of rules in place, a lot of rules. So if all of the rules represented what was legal at the time and was permissible, then I would be an outlaw. And I would take that attitude and, build a multi 7-figure a year publishing group company empire with it. And just that having the mental fortitude to go against what everybody else thought was proper with some advice. Don't do it just because, screw them, I'm going to do it. But I came with a lot of understanding of how to do business in the first place, a lot of IT background of how to get and implement things quickly. And I did it. Whenever I put out my first book, let's not talk about the very first unedited books, but when I started implementing editing, the rule was that you reached out to an editor, you got their information, and then, you schedule the time that you would deliver the book, and they would give you your book back 6 weeks later. And I'm like, I'm not waiting 6 weeks. I'm not waiting 6 days. So we built infrastructure so that at the time, if I had a book that I finished on Monday, we had it edited, reviewed, and proofread and out on Friday. So we don't and did not consider what everybody else thought to be the proper way to do things and adhere to it. I'm like, this is what I need to get done. Grab a couple of bricks, beat yourself in the private parts, and let's get this figured out.
Now, Michael, you started out, you wrote in 2015, you wrote 3 books in November, one in December, one in January. A year later, you're at 6 figures.
Mhm.
How did you, well, first
A
off, were you
month.
still working your other job
Yeah,
when all this was going on?
unfortunately, right in that time frame. So my wife freaked out. I so she didn't. I didn't. I mean, my wife and I. She was at the time she was working for one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in the world, Novartis, and she had at that time she might have been around $500 million worth of responsibility. And all of a sudden, her husband, I was a stay-at-home dad. I took care of our kids
Okay.
along with everything else. Although we have great kids, so it's not like I had to deal with going to the jail or anything to get them out of anything.
Right.
But she knows that I have a solid income stream, and then I have this writing thing. And she didn't really know exactly how much income that writing thing was doing, but she was like, "You never know when this is going to stop. You should keep your clients." And I was like, "Oh my God, I didn't want to do anything to do with this." So, right, a year later, I was doing over $100,000 a month.
A month.
A month.
Oh, so how long did it take you to build up that kind of money? How long did it take to get that kind of income stream?
The first book's released in November. I think my first 100,000 a month, if you include the bonus that came with it, was probably October. So, but I was, just to give you some idea, the first month was maybe $300. For second month was 3,000. Third month was like 10, 12, 15, 18, 24, to the 40 to 50,000 in the summertime, and then on up to 100,000 by October, November of the following, that
Well,
year.
I think that would give you some good motivation. You're actually seeing results from all the hard work
Oh,
that
it
you're
was
doing.
very motivating. I was, they say serial entrepreneur. I was a serial entrepreneur failure because I knew everything about what didn't work by that time. I had tried it. I had tried to build companies. And so when this was working, it wasn't because I'm like, I understand. I've been to college. I have seen what needs to work. No, I was like, you know what? This isn't failure. I have a PhD in failure. Ergo, this must be success. And so I'm going to keep doing this and double it down, because you always hear, when that train comes in, you need to grab a hold of it, you need to run it, and you need to ride it as hard as you can. So that's what I did for what, Craig? We were 3.5 years. before I basically took 2 days off in a row. I think in the first 3.5 years, I only took maybe 2 days off, and that wasn't even full time.
Wow.
So Craig can speak to this as well. I mean, in the beginning when we were working hard, there's no weekends. I don't know what those were. We didn't have them. Craig, you
Now,
want to speak to that too?
yeah, I was just gonna say, Craig, did you experience something similar to this, or how did that look like?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we worked 365 days those first 3-4 years solidly. A slow day, we only put in about 12 hours, but generally I was 14 to 16 hours every day for years, the first few years. But as Michael would tell you, as an entrepreneur, you do that. When you first build your business, you're the sole employee. You're the one with the vision. You're the one with the capital, hopefully, and you are the one driving that train until you can bring other people on board. And so you keep your nose to the grindstone. We went down to Australia for my son's wedding, and I got 1,000 words. I wrote 1,000 words on the morning of his wedding because, hey, I'm up and I'm jamming. Sure. And every day, just because our secret to success early, I mean, Michael's was far more than mine, but when we collaborated, it worked really well. But the secret was feeding the readers the books that they wanted to read. Because I wrote my most successful series of all of my series was the Terry Henry Walton Chronicles with Michael and May. And we put out 10 books in 9 months. And I took a break in there to put out a third book in a different series. So I wrote 11 books in 9 months about, I want to say 850,000, 900,000 words.
There's a million.
It was massive.
I'm going to ask you
massive effort.
I'm going to ask you a question I know that other people are going to be curious about. How did you know what the readers wanted? You're fairly new into this. How did you know what itch to scratch?
For this one was Michael. Michael hadn't made his first $100,000 month yet, and he called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I have a gap in my timeline on my main series. I have a secondary character that I introduced who is a Marine, and this time period. My main character has left Earth, so Earth is destroyed. So I need a Marine who it lives in a post-apocalyptic world." He said, I know a guy, and that's you. Would you be willing to write this character and cover this 150-year timeline? I see 3 or 4 books. Well, we started. So it filled a gap. It filled a gap for the readers. And because Michael knew, because he was already, because you heard that progression from 500 to 3,000 to 10,000 to 45,000. And so he knew his readers wanted this because Michael maintained an excellent relationship with his readership through the Arthurian Gambit Facebook page. So he got a lot of feedback, and they said, "Hey, we want to know what's happening on Earth while Bethany Ann is in space." And I
wasn't going to do it.
And he had no bandwidth because he was doing Bethany Ann. He promised them 21 books. And so my 4 books, no problem. So by the time I got the 4th book done, we were, I think, 5 total years into that 150-year timeline. So yeah, it took a few more than 4 books.
Now you hear, like Chris Fox wrote, right to market. That seems to be a very common good business strategy when it comes to this. Did you guys do that, or were you writing what you enjoyed reading, or a little bit of both, or what you felt comfortable with? How did that work?
It was writing what I enjoyed reading. I mean, none of these, for the most part, although Craig's got quite a few of his own nonfiction books, I don't. A lot of mine is just things that I feel. I want a vampire book. I want something near Earth. If it should be popular, I want to make sure it goes in enough areas that I'd still want to write it. I would never suggest saying that you'll do 21 books. That was not really a great idea. Very financially successful, but mentally and emotionally, it was a real drag by book 17, 18, 19.
Okay.
The things that Craig was doing, one part that is post-apoc, the genre, they will rip you apart if you don't understand what they're doing. And I certainly recognize that. And I had no desire to learn what was necessary to do post-apoc. And then so, I knew of Craig because of the very nascent 20 books at the time that I had started, and he was in there and he was doing some things. So we kind of knew each other a little bit from there. But he's absolutely correct. When I reached out to him and said, "Hey, would you consider this?" And I'm rejection adverse, my personality wise. So I was, he had no idea that I'm sitting here on this other side going, I hope he doesn't think I'm a doofwaddle by reaching out to him and asking him if he'd be willing to do this. But Craig and I, it was the start of a beautiful friendship.
Okay, so
and that series has done really well. So we can't put down the quality of the readership and their embrace of that genre, even though they were science fiction fans who liked vampires, which was a kind of a crossover. But that's Michael said, I like reading this stuff. So vampires, but it's technical on how they became vampires, not paranormal. And then writing the post-apoc, I had a lot of fun with it, and I burnt out writing 10 books. I mean, I had enough, and so that's why we took that group. So we liked the characters, but we took them to space. So then I wrote 7 more books of them in space, actually 8 more books of them in space. So that series became 19 books of Terry Henry Walton. And
I'm going to speak to this one just for a second, Craig, because I was in Europe at the time, and I'm hearing from Craig, one more book, last book, I'm done. The day that I get to pop the top on the beer that Terry Henry is over, the family's going through Europe. I'm on the train going underneath the English Channel, and I'm listening to Five Finger Death Punch, which I did not know at the time that, Craig is a fan of heavy metal as well as I am, things you find out later. And they have, oh God, what was the song, dude? I'm blanking on it. Bad Company, the song Bad Company that Five Finger Death Punch had redone. And I'm listening to that and I'm like, oh, that would be like the perfect thing if Terry Henry were to go and create this mercenary corp called Bad Company. And then, so I'm thinking of this going, it's the perfect idea. I have to tell Craig that Terry Henry can keep going, and he's really looking forward to not doing it. So I'm like, oh, I'm gonna, making that phone call and say, hey, Craig, I've got this idea. This character you don't want to write anymore. So fortunately, he was willing to get aboard.
I'm going to go back in time just a little bit. You had alluded to K-boards. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. How did that morph into 20 books, or kind of push you into 20 books?
So when in the beginning, and I would highly suggest this for all authors, pay more attention to your early fans than you possibly ever can. You cannot give them enough personalized time with you. You will create fanatics, not just fans, and that will catapult you way beyond anything you can do from an advertising perspective. And this is something for a longer discussion, but I would really talk about that. But related to what was going on with K-boards at the time, I was brand new. I hadn't listened to anything before I was writing my books and putting it out. So I didn't have this background of knowledge of what I should or shouldn't do, but I certainly started listening. Steve Campbell's, the author podcast, the business podcast that he'd done, Author Business. What do they call it? Author Biz? The Author Biz podcast was something I listened to a lot. And K-boards was kind of like the place at the time where you went and talked about authoring, about writing. And it leaned more business, which is what I was interested in. And during this time with my fans, I was answering questions in something I had just started doing, these author notes at the back of the books to try to create a relationship. I figured some people will be on Facebook, but everyone who's read the book, if they finish the book, will get to the author notes in the back. And so I was writing some engaging stuff to say, hey, maybe if they know who I am, they'll like me enough. And if they hated the book, but they like me, they won't at least stick a 1-star review. And so I would be engaging people. And then on the Facebook page, some of my fans were asking, because I was telling them about this whole author thing I was doing. And I had coined the term 20 books to 50K based on my whole plan to try to retire down in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. And so I started the book, or the group 20 books to 50K, and told the 4 fans, let's move these conversations about writing into that area so that we can separate the stuff we're talking about, how to write versus what the stories are. And during that time, I engaged with those 4 fans, and 5 fans technically, and then 4 of them put out books. based on these conversations, and all 4 books went into the top 10,000 of the store. And so I had been talking on Kboards how to do some of this stuff, and I was getting a lot of flack from it. A lot of people basically they were giving me a hard time. So my attitude was, fuck you. Here's the results of the 4 fans that I've personally helped. You can go into Amazon and go look at their books and look at their ranking to find out whether or not I'm full of shit or not. So screw y'all. If y'all don't want the help, I don't care. I'll go and maybe I'll help a few other people. Maybe 4 will become 8. And then I'll help people over here who care to talk business. That's all I care to do. It's not like how to write books. There's plenty of that out there. It was the business side of things. And so I did that, and I gave the one finger fuck you salute to Kboards, and went over to the Facebook group. And, that weekend, 80 people showed up, and Craig was in that group. And then, it grew from there, but that was kind of the beginning of what happened.
Yeah, the feedback I got in a parallel thread with Michael was, don't leave your day job. This isn't for you. You shouldn't be a writer. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. Not. So Michael's like, hey, let's talk about the business. Okay, I wrote the book. The book's fine, but let's talk about how we need to market it. And Michael's first response was, hey, you should probably look at new covers. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And I look back now, and my covers were absolutely horrendous. But I didn't know anything. And the thing with Kboards was it didn't teach you anything. It was just a bunch of people who were, their opinions varied, and they weren't focused on my success. And no, nobody should, except you go over 20 books to 50K, and they are. People aren't, because we don't allow it. Michael's 2 rules were don't self-promote and don't be a dick. So you take both of those things out of it, and all of a sudden it makes it a lot easier to help others. And people will give their opinions, and sometimes you'll get diametrically opposed opinions, but they're all opinions to hopefully help whoever posts whatever the question to do better, and not because, hey, look at me, I'm great and you're not, and I'm going to do everything I can to put my boot across your neck and hold you down so I can continue to be great. And what some of the people on Kboards didn't understand was this is not a zero-sum game. There is no, I don't have to lose for you to win. We can all win. And Michael proved that with those first 4 fans who became authors, that, hey, look at all 4 of these books are top 10,000. And my books are still up there top 1,000. So tell me who loses here when we're writing great books. We're writing books to keep fans entertained. And so that's the premise, 20 books to 50K. We're holding true to that. We are at 59.6 thousand. So within a month or 2, we will be over 60,000 members of 20 books to 50K.
And
when did 20 books to 50K start the Facebook group?
I started it in February of
March?
2016. No,
16?
February of 2016.
Wow, that has taken off like wildfire, to say the least.
No, actually, it's interesting. A lot of these things happen. Like you see nothing, and you see traction.
Yeah.
So we were in a few hundred people. Craig will remember this. We were at a few hundred people for quite a while. And it just so happened that I had done an event in summer of 2016 related to when I was doing 50K a month, and that was recorded, but it wasn't released. The gentleman who recorded it had a paywall. And that paywall, and Craig, was it at the end of 2017 that he released it? To the, like right there, it's December or January of 2017, 2018?
It was a ways down the road, because your first was the $10,000 month. I think that really vaulted it. And that came out, I think, March or April. And that was a video, YouTube. But the 50,000, that was a completely different level and different scale. So I don't even remember that one. All I remember is the $10,000.
Yeah, so we were at 2,000 when it came out. And I'm fairly certain it was into 2017, because our first 20 books was 2018, right?
That was 2017.
Was it? Okay, so it must have been into 2016 that it came out.
Okay.
So we had gone from like 2,000, all of a sudden we jumped up to 4, 6, 8, 10,000, right when that came out, because it became infamous on the internet, related to indie writers doing a $50,000 month. It just really wasn't spoken about. And we were sharing at that time. We were sharing, just to let people know what could be done. I stopped sharing at a certain point because it overwhelmed people. I can't possibly do that much per month. I'm like, okay, I just need to stop sharing. Let those that are making a great money, but less money, and letting people think that they could achieve it.
For those who don't know or have never heard of 20 books, who is it for? And do you have any idea what the demographics are as a breakdown as far as, like people who have never hit publish or people who are seven-figure authors, what does it look like?
I'll take this one. Michael asked me to take over leadership of 20 Books 50K in 2017 in the summer, as Terry Henry was coming to a close. I think I had written the 10th book, and I was like, "Hey, I'm taking a break from writing," which I didn't do, by the
He
way.
lies.
I kept writing because I enjoy writing. That's what I really like to do, and I try to write every single day, regardless. But I took the helm because Michael's like, I got so much other stuff to do as I'm expanding brands, as I'm expanding series, that I can't be in here every day. So summer 2017, and we kept the focus on, because we had some craft posts and things like that, and it's like, all they do is lead to firefights because there's so many different genres in here. But one thing we can all agree on is we have to write great books, and we have to put them in the right reader's hands. So
Sure.
the business side of it came to, we assume you write a great book, and we encourage people join a craft group, join a very, very specific genre group, subgenre group, get your fans on board, and then come on back when you want to talk about business and what it takes to put that book into the right reader's hands, which is I mean, we have tens of thousands of posts on what that means. So there's a wealth of information, and it's for authors. Even if you haven't published before, this is where we encourage you, finish the book and publish it, because you're not going to learn if you don't have a published book. Now, a lot of people will do a lot of the steps before they publish that first book. They'll start building a newsletter list. Okay, but they understand what the end state is. Too many people say they want to write a book, but then they don't. And they get lost in all the details that go into being a professional author. And professional, all that means is that you've sold your book to a stranger. One book, that makes you a professional because you've taken your art and you've made money off it. Now you're probably still in the red because you paid for a cover or something like that, but none of that matters. You're now selling your art. You're selling your creation. You can do that and be successful and have a day job, and nobody's putting any pressure on you except yourself. Are you doing better today than yesterday? Whether it's writing, whether it's marketing, whether it's the business side, are you controlling your costs? Are you doing what you need to do as a business, at the business of being a professional author? And we just show people that it's not insurmountable, that if you have the wherewithal to write a book, you can do all of the other stuff you need to make that book successful. That's what 20 Books 50K is all about, helping people to manage their business in a way that will help them through the hurdles, their hurdles, but you can get over them. If you can write a book, you can get over any of the hurdles in the business.
Do you know the breakdown as far as like demographics in the group or a ballpark?
Oh, sure. It's probably 65% women, generally a little older, but also that's a limitation of Facebook. The Facebook users are
Right.
generally a little older. So we do have some young people, but we had to strong arm them in, or their parents strong arm them in, to use Facebook just so they can see the group, because we aren't anywhere else. We're all volunteers, and we are maxed out with this one forum for the information. But we use that for the conferences. Now the conferences are wide open. We'll talk about TikTok. We'll talk about Wide. We'll talk about all of the various aspects of being a self-published author. And self-published, we use that loosely because we have a lot of traditionally published authors too, who are seeing that, hey, by the way, self-published, you kind of have the opportunity to make a lot of money, and you don't have to share it with people like you do if you're trad, where there's a lot of steps between writing that book and actually seeing it in the bookstore and making the sale.
Right. So do you have a breakdown as far as like published authors or what people are making, that kind of stuff that's in
Probably,
there?
I mean, the easiest way would actually do it from the 20 Books conference. Craig, you've got more stats really on the conference, because we don't do surveys to speak of.
Sure.
I mean, surveys get it done, but it's not us, generally speaking, that are asking to do surveys in the group.
Yeah, we did a survey 2 years ago, but my questions weren't the best, even though I had an industrial psychologist go through them. And what we saw was probably comparable to what we have at the conference. Now, the conference, we have all the stats.
Sure.
So last year, out of 1,700 people registered, we had over 200 making full-time money. That's $50,000 or greater. We had approximately 50 people making over $500,000 or more at last year's conference. We had, out of 1,700, I think we had 350, 400 who hadn't published yet, but they're there at the conference. It's like, I tell people, dress for the job you want, which means if you want to be a successful author, how about you come to the conference and hang out with successful authors?
Sure.
See what the attitude is, see what their approach is, talk to them. And and one thing we put out hard is no one's going to carry you. It's not like, hey, I have a book. Can you just do all this stuff for me? No, we're going to teach you to do it so you can reap the rewards. And
Yeah,
that's what the conference is about. Yeah.
All
I mean,
right.
it's really telling. Go ahead.
Go ahead,
No,
Michael.
go.
I'm sorry.
So back in like the 2019 event, which is like the last one that was at Samstown, I had the opportunity, Judith and I travel the world. We get to speak to quite a few different people, but we brought in mainly the head guy, not the owner, but the head guy of Publishers Weekly. You know, that magazine's been around 150 years.
Sure.
They didn't understand what indie publishing was. They understood what, the guy in his garage was doing. But he was there, as well as the lady who started, really created Ingram Spark for the Ingram Company, the print on demand group, Robin Cutler. Both of them, that was their first event, and they go into it and they see what is effectively a rock show, because we were in the biggest part of Samstown, and that is where they hold 800 or 1,000 people rock shows. There's been an album done there that's photographed and everything. And they had no idea. And they told me, hands down, never seen anything like it. The best indie show ever. And this is, Robin at the time said, I've been to 1,000+ conferences in my lifetime. None of them had the energy of what this is. And that's because really what we're there to do is help them be somebody. Neither Craig or I make any money off of this. We always, quote, quote, lose money because it's our heart to do these things. It is a nonprofit. There is only a, quote, board of 2. It's Craig and I. That's it. And that has allowed us to some degree to withstand a lot of the bullshit that has gone on, because we don't take, there's no $10,000 person saying, I'd like to be a platinum sponsor. No, the same cost that it goes to a person who wants to show up that has their little cover company, artists, is the same amount of money that Amazon pays. Craig?
Not having sponsors is freeing because we aren't beholden to anybody. And the good news about that is we get everybody because there's no pressure on companies to provide a sponsorship. So, I mean, we have people who buy bigger booths at our vendor day and stuff like that, but they're paying a set price that anybody has access to within reason. I mean, we offer it to the bigger vendors like Amazon, Google, Podium, Tantor, Drafted Digital, the bigger companies, just because of the sheer number of people that they're going to bring. But every person they bring, we get the exact same conference attendee fee. So they'll bring 8 people. That's $299.99 each. And oh, by the way, this booth is $2,500. So here you go. And the reason we charge that is because that's what we get charged, because we get charged by the table, by the day. So we're only covering our costs with that, as well as the vendors, as well as the conference fees. $300 for a 5-day show? You got to be kidding me. And we got a room rate. My goal always was that somebody could come to the show, conference fee, room, travel, and then some for food, and get in and out of the show for under $1,000. Because like I said, we had 400 people who didn't have a book, and then maybe another 200, 300 who only had one book. So 700, almost half of the people who attended were really new to the business. But they're sponges. They got there, and next year they all set goals for the following year. Like, hey, I'm coming next and next year I'm going to have 4 books published, or I'm going to have 3, or I'm going to have my first $1,000 month. And those kind of goals are hugely beneficial to somebody who's just starting out, even if they're old. I wrote my first book when I was 52.
Wow, that's
So, I
old.
mean, Michael, he doesn't even know what 52 looks like because he's a young fella.
Yeah, invite me. I'm 50 something now.
But might as well segue to the 20 books Vegas. That's been going on since 17. We were at Sam's Club at first. Last year was the first year at Bally's, and it just keeps on
Which ones have
growing.
you been to,
I've been to every one
Patrick?
in
Oh,
Vegas.
have you?
Yeah, absolutely. What was it, the Bonanza
Yeah, I'm
Room or
such
the
a.
Ponderosa Room or whatever that
Oh
was?
yeah.
Ponderosa, man.
Yeah, that's
Well,
right.
I suck at names and faces, and frankly, I'm unlike Craig. Craig is very gregarious and outgoing. The only reason Craig looks tired is because he is. He's also on. He has these different things about his sleep time, right? But I'm not personality driven to be out amongst a large crowd for that many days. I'll get hyped for one situation, but I hide a lot. People are like, "Where is he?" Is like he's hiding.
Yeah, but
So I don't know anything. But what's your experience been since you brought it up?
no, it was
Yeah.
great. I started the first one, and I went to it knowing one author, and I think the first one was in 17, right, in
Mhm.
Vegas. And how many people attended? Maybe 800, 700,
No, no, no. We had
Four?
400.
Wow. Yeah, because we didn't have like that big, like room, like you were saying, where rock bands play and all that. It was the Ponderosa Room and whatever else.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
like I said, I knew one author. I said hi when we were like checking in, and that was it. Then I didn't know a soul. And there was some really good speakers, but what to me, I'm more of an extrovert than an introvert. So of course I go down to the Ram's Head Bar, which is this cheesy, Vegasy bar with the cheesy rainforest and cheesy, waterfall
The
that,
Hey,
animatronics.
we give
yes.
Samstown a lot of crap, but man, everybody talks about that stuff.
Oh yeah, I mean it is no, and I tell you what, the tables and gambling was cheaper there than it is on the strip. So there is that. Not that I spent a
You
whole lot
and
of time.
7 other people were gambling out of 400, which is part of what Samstown wasn't pleased with.
Boy, that's
Yeah,
no
yeah.
lie. And I think we shared that with a bowling team at the time. There was a big bowling
Mhm.
thing going on. So there's guys with bowling shirts and the funny shoes walking all over the place. But hey, they were nice. What the hell? But for me, my first night, I'm down by the bar, and I was a cop at the time, and cops just kind of know other cops. And Charles Tillman was
Mhm.
down at the bar, and we just
Mhm.
started chatting. And okay, so we started talking, blah blah blah, and then I saw Cecilia Mecca and her husband Mike. And Cecilia had a posse. I mean, she had this following of people that literally followed her around. And Mike is involved in the business. He was going to the different speakers and all that kind of stuff. He's more in the advertising part of it. He wants to learn all the advertising ins and outs and the numbers. He's very analytical.
Mhm.
And Cecilia was surrounded by all these romance writers, and I looked at this guy and I'm like, he needs saving. Oh my god, this poor guy. So I didn't know him, so I'm like, dude, how are you doing? Come have a beer with us. So I grabbed him a beer, and he just started talking about how much money Cecilia was making. She has a PhD. She was on path to being a professor, and she's writing medieval Scottish romance, and her books are surpassing what she would be making doing that. And she was in education, and he's like, I can't believe this. And he said, there's a ton of money to be made here. And for me, that was like a light bulb moment. It's like, really? I've never met somebody face to face, having a beer with them, and he's showing me her numbers, and it's like, holy shit, look at that. That's amazing. And then I don't know if you guys know Rob Peacher. He writes westerns.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
Yeah, super guy, super guy.
You'll
And
find out that Craig is the one who knows everybody. I don't
yes,
know very few people. So when I have questions, I call Craig out of the blue, which is normally twice a week. And I'll ask him,
Who's this person?
but I made friends with Rob, and we all became friends. And we talked about writing. I don't think Charles didn't publish anything back then. He had nothing, but he jumped on and he just sinked his
He's
teeth
published
in.
with us, with me since then.
Yeah, and he's told me that, and he's super excited about it, and he loves the business, and he's very enthusiastic, and he was back then, and it was just nice being around other people. But if I would have stayed in my room after after 5 p.m. or whatever, I never would have met anybody. And it's going circling back to Cecilia and her husband. Brian Cohen had a pizza lunch for the people that listen to his podcast. So I shared an Uber with Mike and Cecilia, and that's why when I saw them at the Ram's Head bar, I'm like, hey, I remember them from lunch. Again, if you don't put yourself out there, you're not gonna. I'm not gonna say you're not gonna get anything out of it because you will, but you'll get a lot more out of it if you kind of break that shell a little bit and just
And we make it easy. I mean,
yeah,
Craig has a
absolutely.
whole group of people, and after what, this is 4 times, the team that Craig has put together is amazing, and their ability to know that most authors are introverts is something else. At the new Bali's event and venue, there's this massive space that's in front of like a bunch of the large rooms that you'll find yourself going through all the time. There's a bunch of tables there, and there's always at least 80 people hanging out, talking, even though events are happening, but they're there. They might just not have an event they want to go to. They might just be catching up. But from the beginning, Craig and I talked about that the knowledge is important. The relationships are special. The relationships is why you want to come to the conference itself, that you cannot get no matter what video you go to. And it's going to be that situation where you're going to meet Cecilia and her husband, Mike, and then next thing you know, you're going to be on a dinner with them, but then you're going to meet somebody else, and that person might be the one that you in collaborating with. You cannot tell. A large portion of my business is based on going to an event and meeting Lori Starkey, and who Judith and I just had lunch with her and her husband again for the first time in 3 years, 2 days ago here in Vegas, which is where we live part time. It's the meeting the people.
Yeah, I can't agree
Yeah.
with.
And one thing,
Go ahead.
one thing we decided early on was, because of the information, we figured it was going to fire hose people, is that we were going to record all the sessions from our conferences at no additional cost to anyone. Now, we have to build that into the conference fee, but we have. Last year, we spent $105,000 on just the cost of audiovisual, and that includes recording the sessions. And so we make those available. So, and this
Hey, Craig, now let me ask
helps.
this real quick. You say you make those available. How much does it, if you're listening to this podcast right now and you want to go back and look at those, which are arguably considered some of the best information right now available, how much will it cost a person to go get those recordings and see them?
You go to YouTube and you get on the 20 Books to 50K live events YouTube channel, and then you start you dig into your wallet, you start adding things up, pull out a few dollars, and then put them back, because it doesn't cost you anything for all these past sessions.
So
and then
exactly nothing.
And nothing. You get it on the YouTube channel, 20 Books live events. Now, one thing that we have done is we've monetized that channel. So if you don't have a premium YouTube subscription to keep the ads out, you will see ads. Other people advertise on our channel. And all of that money, Michael and I don't get any of that money. That actually goes to the admin team to just thank them for their efforts with this. But YouTube, and next year, 2022, this year, we'll do exactly the same thing. All of those sessions will go onto the YouTube channel. Now, they will be shown separately, because we did charge a virtual fee for those who wanted to watch the sessions as they happened, and have an opportunity to ask questions. And so that is going to be a separate Facebook group where they can dive in. All of the sessions will be live streamed there, whether a panel or a presentation. And the reason we did this from the outset was because of the fire hose effect. And then also, as we expanded, we had sessions going on in 4 different rooms in Sam's Town, and in Bali's, we have 12 different sessions going simultaneously. No matter how energetic you are, you can only go to one. So if you're networking, we encourage people that, hey, if you're having a good, valuable conversation with somebody, continue it. You can always watch the session later because it's always going to be available to you and in perpetuity. Now, we have agreements with some people, like when Amazon speaks, we can't record their sessions because they don't want to have it information that's correct today out there next month or next year, because it may not be correct as things change. So that's okay. It just we advertise that up front. But otherwise, we make those sessions available. You can join the virtual, gives you a chance to watch them live and ask questions, or you can just watch them for free later, a week or two after the show. They'll pop up on YouTube, and there you go. This year we should have close to 200 sessions because we've got an extra room. We've got silver, gold, and platinum, all as separate rooms, along with the event center. So each of those holds 700 people. The event center will hold up to 4,000. We should have about 2,500 people at the show this year. And it's looking good. We've got a great bevy of guest speakers. One of Patrick's favorites, Mark Cameron, who writes the Tom Clancy books, the Jack Ryan series. He picked up from Tom Clancy after Tom Clancy passed away. And he writes in the caliber of Vince Flynn, Tom Clancy. Excellent retired U.S. Marshal. He's coming to the show, and he'll speak to us, and he'll be available to network and just hang out with. I mean, come on, think about that. Retired U.S. Marshal, who, oh, by the way, writes New York Times bestsellers, and I think he's got a couple #1 New York Times bestsellers in his portfolio.
Yeah, I was talking to Mark about that, and we were talking about doing maybe a little bit of a choir practice, where it would be myself and him and some other law enforcement that, we're just going to sit down and tell war stories like in a conference room after hours and have a few drinks, and anybody's invited. I mean, we're going to do our law enforcement panel, and he's going to be on it, but if you want to be an informal, you don't want to talk in front of or ask a question in front of a big group, here's your chance.
That'd be awesome.
Like you said, here's a guy he's a superstar. In this, and he was a U.S. Marshal for 30 years.
Hey, Patrick, obviously talk with Craig related to the rooming. That's on him. Craig and I had, by the way, I want to support Craig in all of this and say that, these things, Craig is who makes these things happen. He's the one who came to me and asked about it originally. We had a gentleman's agreement that I don't think we've ever gone back on, Craig, which is I'm happy to show up. And mind you, when I said this, I didn't realize Craig was decided to go worldwide. So if he decides to put something on Pluto or Mars, I might have to renege on some of this, because he's now dragged my ass to Australia. So the agreement was I'll show up and I won't ever force or anything to the speakers. Craig has final say on all the speakers, period. So people come to me at times. They don't do it so much anymore, but they used to come to me and go, I really think I'd be great. And I'm like, that's fun, fantastic. Now go talk to Craig, because I have nothing to do with who gets to talk. to speak to that, it took 4 years before I got to speak at my own damned conference named. I mean, it was, he finally decided.
Damn you, Craig. What the hell?
Oh, maybe Mike. Yeah.
Well, the agreement was, I'm not going to have anything to do with the admin and logistics of setting it up and running it, but I'll show up. So yeah, we got him to Bali and Australia and Scotland and Spain.
Yeah. So finally, I'm like, I think you won this one, Craig. I can't make every single one you're willing to go to. But what I was going to say with that is, talk to Craig on what's available in the rooms, and then talk to me beforehand. And LMBPN will definitely put some money to getting some booze or whatever you guys want related to that, because we love to support those who have supported us, and law enforcement is one of them.
Okay, be careful what you say you're going to do, because that might cost you a pretty penny. A bunch of cops getting together, having drinks. There could be a donut stipend. You never know.
I'll have T-shirts be made. Where are the donuts? 20booksto50K law enforcement.
Yes, exactly. But I was going to ask you guys, I'm going to switch gears a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
When was the light bulb moment for you where you're like, holy shit, I could make a living doing this. I could quit the day job. My life is going to totally flip. I'm going to do this writing thing for a living. Do you remember where you were, or did you talk to your wife about it, or you're just like, holy cow, how did this happen?
So, I mean, I'll speak a little bit to that. At the time, my wife and I had separate companies. You know, she had her executive worldwide effort. I had my own personal little company, Entrepreneur, which she liked quite a bit and took care of the kids and you know, was the at-home parent. And I was doing about $100 a day was one of my goals for each one of my clients, right? If I could just get $100 a day from each of my little clients, well, overall. And so I was doing this stuff. And so that's, you know, I think my goal at the time somewhere was like 80 to 90,000 was how much I had been expecting to make annually for my little consulting company. And so when, you know, I went to 10,000 a month, I mean, that's it, right? That's now I've replaced it. So, and it's growing. And that was the important part is like, hey, you know, if I do something and it grows, then there's a chance. So along, you know, month 4, month 5, when I'm doubling my annual capability,
Yeah.
then I'm realizing, hey, this is something that's really going to keep going. And, you know, my aspirations got bigger and bigger. And it was Boyd Craven at a superstar event one time that he just threw off this idea that he wanted to be able to make 100,000 a year or a month. I'm sorry. And so I'm like, I looked over and I remember that moment when I'm looking at him at this conversation we were having at this table, and I'm like, 100,000 a month? That's possible. Then I didn't know any better. I didn't know jack off, right? So I didn't know that it couldn't be done. So I'm like, well, he's having success. He had a book club at that moment when book clubs were really life changing. And so I'm of like, sure, if 100,000 a month is plausible, then that's what I'm going for. And so when you know, I started, when I was in the 10 to 15K a month and then moving to 20, 25K a month, I'm like, okay, this is a done deal. This is, and I loved it. You know, they always say, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Sure, some of what we do is work, but I get to work making stories and building these things to enjoy readership. And I get to go read the stories, not all of them, obviously, we put out too many now, but I get to go read the stories and just, I can go to sleep with it, right? The audio of what we do. We're in 7 different languages now, you know, and so I love business. That's part of what my fascination is. And one of the things is that, you know, I'll even sometimes call Craig because, you know, while he's certainly one of my best friends, I'll abuse the shit out of the fact that he's a consultant. So I'll call him up and go, hey man, I got a business question for you. You know, and so I love what we do. But to answer your question, it was back when I had doubled my monthly.
Okay. And Craig, I'll ask you the same question. I don't know if you heard it or not. What was the light bulb moment where this writing thing could be a sustainable income? Where it's shit. This is going to change my life. You know, I know you're retired, and then you retired from another career, and you know you're setting yourself on fire in Alaska or doing whatever you're doing. But you know, what was there a monetary amount, or was there like some kind of event where you're like, holy shit, I can do this for a living?
It was, I tell you, it was meeting Michael Anderle because of my income and revenue. I sold like 53 books on my first book that I wrote, and I think 50 of them were to my dad. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And that book actually was one that sold to a traditional publishing house because they were looking at expanding their brand. So they had a very short term, hey, we need these kinds of books, post-apoc, but not zombie. And I'm like, hey, I got a book just like that. And they're like, ooh, but it's already published. And I'm like, I sold like 3 total copies to strangers. So like, yeah, that doesn't really affect our market. So we're good. And I sent it to them and they loved the story and tweaked it up and made a single book into a 3-book series. And we made it work. But that was, I climbed from like $100 revenue to 300 to 500. And I saw the incremental change up to about $3,000 a month. And I'm like, hey, look at this. It's working great. But then the 2016 election, it drove my sales down. I think it drove everybody's sales down in October and November. But then in December, I had finished the one book with Michael, the first book in that post-apoc series. And that month, I think I made $9,800, so almost a 5-figure month. But then, and it was set up for the next month when I actually had 2 releases. Books 2 and 3 in that series were coming out in January. And I exceeded five figures that month and have never had a month that was less than five figures since. And that was January 2017. And my biggest month ever for revenue, well, that has changed with this year. This year's is just a phenomenal year so far. But I went and bought a truck. My truck that I have right now, I bought with my royalties. So that's like my present to me for realizing that success with those stories. And that's when I realized it was December when I went from, because sales tanked October, November. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know what happened, the election of 2016, the presidential election.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think November I had maybe 1,100 total dollars in sales, and my expenses were a little more than that. And so I'm looking at zero. Okay, well, cool. This is a hobby. But then December, my expenses were still about the same, about $1,000. And oh, by the way, look at this. Oh, man. And fans were just gobbling up that book, and they liked it because it was in Michael's series. So I was satisfying Michael's readers, the readership that he had built up, as well as bringing my readers over to his universe, his readers over to my backlist.
Sure.
And that was a huge win for both of us. I mean, my readership was smaller. However, keeping his readers happy, it took some pressure off him in having to deliver a book every 2 weeks. And so he was able to meter and measure out his the books that he was publishing, and not have to listen constantly to when's the next book, even though he still got that. But it's like, oh, by the way, here's one, and we satisfied the readership. So that it was December of 2016, and it was a relationship with Michael Anderle that has flourished and benefited us both in good ways. I mean, we just go hang out. When I go to Vegas, I mean, sure, we talk about publishing because what we do and what we like, but I mean, we tell some good jokes. We went to
Judas Priest,
Queensryche and Judas Priest concert last time we were there. And hey, I saw earplugs that are made specifically for concerts and professional bands called Eargasm. I know it sounds kind of hokey, but take a look. Okay. Michael, that may be that may
sorry,
be
Patrick, we're totally waylaying your show. I'm gonna go to
no, that I'm totally down with that because I love live music. I mean, I saw the Foo Fighters, when was it, right before everything closed down, and I was right next to the stage. Like, it was standing room only. I was center, right in front, where like the speakers were blown, well, what's left of my hair back, and I couldn't hear right for 2 days. You know, something like that would have been really nice to have.
Eargasm, they're specifically made for rock, and because professional musicians, that's what they'll wear. Yeah, and it tunes out. It's they say they give you still the live concert experience, because I wore earplugs, and so it took off all the high tones, so I kind of missed a lot of what Judas Priest still had cranking. and I think Eargasm, as weird as that sounds, they look like the right earplugs to still get that full concert experience without blasting your head. Because my ears don't. I mean, I have tinnitus so bad and hearing loss. So.
Gotcha. Now
but those kinds of things.
Let's switch gears from Eargasm to writing stuff. More of the technical stuff. You know, both of you guys, do you use Word? Do you use Scrivener? Do you use Atticus? Or what's your process?
I got my start that really started pushing me with Scrivener. That's my go-to at that time. I do a lot more plotting now than I do complete writing books, and so I use Plotter, Plottr.
Yeah, sure.
That's kind of my go-to, the thing I really love, because it works best for my brain. But obviously, I mean, it is very true. Craig and I have both helped hundreds, if not thousands, of people in our discussions. What is best is what works for you.
Yep.
So try what you need to try. But if whatever works for you is some weird situation that no one else uses, great. That's the best thing that works for you, period.
How about you, Craig? What do you use, Craig?
I just paid a guy who used Vellum, because I used Word and published a lot of books directly out of Word. But then I paid a guy who used Vellum, because he had great turnaround times. He took care of me very, very well. And then all of a sudden, Atticus came out, and I started using Atticus. And as it improves with each new iteration, I can format a book for publication in both ebook as well as print in no time. And then there's no issues with a Mother May I, Because if somebody finds
Sure.
a typo, I'll fix it and re-upload. But if I've got one typo and I have to send it to somebody else and then get that file
Mm,
back, now I never have the master file where I really, really want to control the master file.
sure.
So Atticus is what I use. And
That's
I'm a
what
PC guy. I don't use Macs at all.
Oh, okay. See, I love
Oh,
Macs.
feel good.
I love Macs, and I started using Atticus for the book that I just started writing, and it's
Good, good, good.
totally wow. There's a couple of hiccups here and there, but like you said, every iteration just keeps getting better, and I think Pro Writing Aid is now integrated with it.
That's Dave, right?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
does Atticus?
Kindle.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Dave
he's
Yep,
such a
Chesson.
great guy.
Dave. Oh my God, yeah.
Friggin' what a great guy.
He's been on. He has helped more authors. His website, Kindlepreneur. He's got a ton
Hmm.
of free videos on there. There's just yeah, he's probably one of the most like down to earth, cool dudes ever.
Yeah, he was. I mean, I rarely reach out. Once again, rejection averse type situation, but I did reach out to Dave one time, and I just kind of, those stories behind the stories, and I had some questions, and he really was so giving of his time,
Yep.
just to make things happen. So I can't, from my experience with Dave and Kindlepreneur and everything else, it's what a awesome situation.
And I will say his customer service is probably the best bar none. Yeah, his philosophy is, we will take every complaint, we'll have it taken care of in X amount of time, and we want to make sure you're 100% satisfied. I've had him on my podcast a couple times, and I had just a couple of like rookie questions a long time ago with something that maybe it was Kindle Rocket or Publisher
Hmm.
Rocket, and I just emailed, and within a half an hour, and every time I ever had a question, boom, every time, and they're just like, "Are you? Is there anything else? Is there anything else? What can you just?" They're bending over backwards for you. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about him. Outlining, or you said that you use Plotter. How about you, Craig?
Hmm.
Do you fly by the seat of your pants?
Yeah, I don't. I write the first chapter and the last chapter, and then fill all the stuff in between. So no, I don't. I don't plot.
Wow.
I mean, I have a plot all in my head. So when I write a book, I generally stick with just that one book in order to maintain some continuity and consistency,
Hmm,
and not lose that train of thought
sure.
on those stories. So, and I will go back. The one I'm writing now is a little more complex than what I thought it would be. So I have had to go back to fix and add plot points that I wanted, that I had intended to include that I didn't, and it works well. I mean, I'm getting my 2,000, 2,500 words a day,
Okay.
and I'll have this book done before I go to Ireland for the Ireland and UK train ride, before I get to Madrid for 20 Books Madrid on June 4th and 5th.
So either you guys dictate, or are you finger typers?
I
No,
tried dictating. I can dictate dialogue, but I cannot dictate action to save my damn life. It was one of the situations whenever it flows from the fingers, I see the movie in my mind.
Mm.
But as soon as I try to talk action, it comes out as, and then she swung her leg and hit him upside the head. And then, it is that basic. And
Okay.
so it hurts me because my fingers and my knuckles, I mean, we don't talk a little bit about the physical ailments in
Right.
order to accomplish what, I mean, I've been in the hospital now because of stress and everything else one time. So, I've dialed way back on my aggressive work each and every day. I have knuckle problems, which I blame not only the fact that I wrote so many books in the first year, but also on the fact that Apple had the most horrible keyboard in the world. And I love Apple products, but
Yeah.
those keyboards probably did screw up my knuckles. Um, and I could have afforded a different one, but it's just, I'm a lazy
Okay,
person,
gotcha.
and it's like I.
Now I know Craig is a wake up at dark 30 and start working guy. How about you? What's your process?
Yes, I'm typically up on average. I probably wake up on 6:30 in the morning.
Okay.
But I travel so much. Like, we just got back from London on Saturday, I think, for the London Book Fair. Actually, we were coming anyway. Details, but yeah, London Book Fair last week. Just came back, was able to get back in. But I've been like in the UAE twice in the last 6 months, and that's a 12-hour difference from my time zone,
Ugh.
and it messes me up both ways. So
Sure.
we were there for 2 weeks, never got acclimated. Come back, I'm screwed up for 2 weeks. So my time can, I'll end up taking naps in the middle of the afternoon for no good reason. Other than my body's just like, yeah, okay, it's time to go to sleep. Like, what are you talking about? Cool.
Now, LMBPN. What does that stand for?
So London, Madrid, Barcelona, Paris, and New York. Originally, it was Milan, and it was the top 5 fashion capitals. But whenever we decided to create a publishing company, me and my wife transferred that over from Milan to Madrid, and now it's the top like 5 publishing capitals of the world.
Oh, okay. Now, why did you start it? Why start a publishing company? Why not just do your own thing? Oh,
I love business. I really happens that the publishing company had one author, me, because you bootstrap, and so I bootstrapped the company. And things might have changed if the existence hadn't, but did have the success. I did bring in collaborators,
mm-hmm.
and we've built now, we're at over about 1,500 books that the company has in the last 6 years, and we publish anywhere from 250 to 350 titles a year. We are in 7 languages, of which we produce. We have 6 different companies. We do audio licenses, but we've also published about 250 to 300 of our own audiobooks.
Okay.
And so, a lot of the money that this company has made has been piled right back into the company. And so we do quite a bit. And, we've been blessed from that standpoint. And obviously the great collaborators that we have, trying to make sure that we help support them, even though there are things that they have that's not LMBPN books. So for example, with Craig, he'll have a special, and I think it just happened the other day, his very first series, which had a cat in it. There was some conversation about his cat. But anyway, we publish and help support and market, or we don't publish, but we help market his series because he's an LMBPN author. He can't get away from that. I'll tattoo that shit on his ass.
Yeah. We don't want to see that. Just
no, we won't. I'll wear, and I didn't even think to wear the shirt. I mean, I'm wearing, I know you don't do video on this, but I'm wearing my USMC sweatshirt today. And I finally ordered my own Craig Martelle Inc. branded shirts, but they are something very unique. It's not like the standard black.
You did the
black
Hawaii
Under Armour
shirt, didn't you?
I can only imagine.
No, actually, it's a high vis. It looks almost like a motorcycle rider kind of shirt.
Cool.
So it's pretty styling.
All right.
No.
Now, Craig,
Yeah.
do you started your own publishing company? You have some authors that you work with, and you have your own company. How big is that, and how big do you want it to get?
Now that is it's getting people on their feet. Me, I don't have the long-term goal of continually of making money off these folks. What I want to do is a lot of times that's their first introduction to getting published. One, I picked up a 16-year-old author who wrote an incredible book and wrote a second book that was just as engaging. And my intent is for her to take that back over. So as soon as she's ready to take over the business side, I'm going to just cancel my license. It's all back to her. So this is about helping them get where they want to go with their publishing career. Like the project manager on Skyrim, Bruce Naismith, we published his first book, and we've got the second book right in the final pipeline, and that one will publish, I think, in late May. So he understands specifically how to weave a tale, but he didn't. His hobby is Norse mythology and not the Marvel or DC universe. I don't know which one's which.
Yeah.
So we did those, and so it's once again, it's like an expansion of 20 books of 50K in that I'm helping people get where they want to go. That wasn't really a money maker for me. However, those series are doing okay. I just need to make sure the marketing satisfies their needs and gets the book in front of the right people.
Hey,
all right.
Craig, can we and Patrick, I apologize. I'm going to ask Craig this question. Are you okay explaining why you feel a need to give back so much, Craig? Because I don't think that most people realize this about you.
I did things in the Marine Corps nobody should have to do. So I will always have that desire to give back. And I saw the Marine Corps and my second career as a business consultant as helping people. So I got paid to help people. But then when I had what I needed, and then the successful publishing career and writing career, it's like, okay, I still have that desire to help people because it makes me feel good inside. I get a lot out of it. And one thing that drives me as much as it drove Michael, because Michael, we had a good agreement on writing the books, and Michael was happy to pay me my share. And I saw the raw numbers. Here's this. And Michael's like, here, I am happy to give this money to you because I like seeing you successful. I love seeing your truck that you bought with the royalties. And so celebrating other people's successes, it really should make people happy. And it does me. And also, I've, like Michael, I've spent some time in a hospital. I had heart surgery back in 2020, right before the pandemic. So good thing for the pandemic for me was it kept me from traveling when my heart needed to heal from that surgery. So I see that I'm more in the twilight of my life because of not being able to breathe. I had a number of issues this last winter with breathing in the cold air. So trying to do right by the world on the downslope of my existence. So as mortality stares you in the face, yes, I still have plenty of energies. Yes, I think I'm almost at the very top of my game, but you never know when you're going to cash in. And when I do, I want people to say, yeah, the legacy is he wants me to be successful. I'll be successful and say, thanks, Craig. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for helping me realize what is possible. And that's mainly, that's us. We're selling hope, and we're selling it for free, because there is a lot of room at the top of this mountain for people to make money off this business by entertaining people. You look at the crap entertainment that a lot of people are willing to pay for. It's like, but a good book that you can disappear into, and then another good book, a good series, it's gratifying to get that. I've got a series now with closing in on 2,000 reviews on the first book, and it is extremely satisfying and gratifying to see people enjoying the book and then enjoying the sequel and the sequel to that, and then the fourth book, and then buying the fifth book on pre-order. That says, hey, I'm doing my job of entertaining these folks, whether it's 6 hours, 8 hours, or 10 hours out of their life that they're sharing with me. I mean, you can't take that for granted, that somebody is willing to give you 8 hours of their time.
Sure.
And when they do, that's a huge win, that they're reading my book and not something else, or watching Netflix and saying, yes, do you want to watch the next show? Of course. I mean, it's I think reading is a better level of entertainment than just disappearing and brain deading while dicking around on your phone and watching TV.
Well, going back to service, what you were talking about, Michael, I don't think it could be underestimated, the value of service, because, the best times in my life was when I was service to somebody when I was a cop. It's okay. My husband just literally blew his brains out. I'm going to sit here with you for hours, and we're going to go through this, et cetera, et cetera. And it wasn't always that dramatic, but a chance to help somebody out with whatever, it's huge. Now, I don't believe in a draft because I don't think everybody is right for the military, but I think there would be a lot of payoffs for young people if they had to do some type of public service when they got out of high school. I don't know what that would look like. I don't know how the logistics would pan out for that, but I think that's something that's missing with some people. And you don't have to be super wealthy. You don't have to have some superpower. You could just be a regular Joe or Jane and give back. And,
Yeah.
like I said before, the the rewards of service are incredible. And I could, just, I've helped out a ton of authors. I've had, phone calls, whatever, emails, I have the Facebook group. And it's always fulfilling to me. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that. A, help them get something right. And B, I might clear up a little misconception or something that somebody had about cops. And it's like, okay.
Yeah.
Or, hey, I was thinking about becoming one, or my son is
Yeah.
talking about it, or
Grassroots.
my daughter is, and it's, so we're stewards of that. And Craig, with you, with, the Marine Corps stuff and all that, I'm sure there's been more than one person that, hey, I was thinking about going into the Marines or the service, or my son or daughter, or what do you think? So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's services. There's a lot to be said for service, and for what it does for your own psyche.
yes.
Because when I'm feeling down, I'll give something away. Uh, Whenever I need to be boosted up, usually it's by helping others, and that's the boost
Yep.
I need to keep me moving forward.
Yeah. I don't think it can be underestimated. It's very, very powerful. So, marketing. we're in April 15th, 2022. What works? What do you think?
If I think there's at least 4 different ways that you can do publishing. The one that I think is the most effective is an individual author publishing their own stuff and getting out and really interacting with the fans. Start with 2, start with 5. I've seen it work for me. I've seen it work for others. I believe those who are good with being very insular, because remember, my goal was to build a company. And with me not being the one writing all the time, I'm not like Craig. I can write and I can write well, but I don't like it like he does.
Okay.
So I don't get up in the morning going, man, God bless it, I'm going to get another 1,000 words in today. Not really. But I really enjoyed the business part of it. But if you're looking at what works, I would have to say that the 3 things are going to be fan interaction, emails, and advertising on Amazon, and then Facebook.
Okay. Craig?
I think one thing Michael sells himself short on is providing continuous and consistent content. So you can advertise, but you need to put that next book into their hands. And with Michael, with LMBPN, you know you're going to get it. With me, you know you're going to get it. Even though I've slowed down to one every 2 or 3 months in certain series, still publishing 10 books a year, but scattered between a variety of series. So giving the new book, but fan interaction and emails, absolutely doing everything we can. I'm almost up to 20,000 on my email list, and that helps immensely because that foundation of readership is critical to every new release, to every sale, to every promotion. And as you add a reader, this is a new opportunity to get them into your backlist. I've got over 125 books on my backlist, so there's always something we can get them into. Aligning them. Oh, did you like Battleship Leviathan? You will love Glory. You will love Bad Company, and funneling them very directly into other series that are aligned. So, and you can only do that is if you're having that direct and personal conversation with them through your newsletter or through a Facebook group, a social media group of fans who read your stuff.
Okay.
So there you are. My Facebook ads are doing better than my Amazon ads, but
wow.
Generally it's delivering content.
Okay, very good. Going back to LMBPN, I've got a good Boyd Craven story for you, Michael. I reached out to
Who
Boyd.
doesn't?
I was writing. I know he's probably one of the nicest guys.
Yes.
I reached out to him because I was looking for a cover for my first post-apoc book. And I didn't know anything about anything. I didn't know anybody, but I heard you don't like email Stephen King and expect him to tell you everything about his cover designer or something like that. They said go with mid-listers that are doing well. I heard it like on a podcast. I'm like, yeah, makes sense. So I emailed like maybe 5, 10 in that genre, and I liked their covers. And Boyd was the only one who answered. He says, yeah, I use XYZ, blah, blah, blah. We started talking. We became friends. He lives in Michigan. I live in Wisconsin. I've gone over and visited him a few times. Well, before we started recording, I was telling Michael I'm looking for property in Florida. So NINC was going on, and Boyd was down there, and we were talking about it. And I said, well, I don't belong to it. He says, just stop by the tiki bar for a drink. And I'm like, sold, tiki bar and drink, yeah, and maybe a cigar. And you had me at hello. It's like, all right, we are now best friends. So I go there, and there was another author there, and they started talking about you, Michael, and your company. And she was just being a biatch. And she's like, oh, he's a sharecropper. He's a slave driver. He doesn't do dick with those people. He's just taking advantage of their pros and just all this stuff. And I had no idea what LMBPN was. I knew who you were because of 20 books, but that was about it. And I'm thinking to myself, really? And Boyd is like, no, you're wrong. He said he pays them X amount of money per word. Their names are on the covers, and it's a very fair compensation that he's giving them. So she stopped like dead in her tracks. I think she just wanted to hate on somebody at that moment in time. Like there's plenty of people like
well,
that.
I think there's, yeah, well, let me, because I try to explain some of this sometimes. And I realize very early on that success is going to get people who will say things in ignorance. Like, in other words, someone will say some things if you see created by on the cover, created by Michael Anderle, I absolutely guarantee that is a ghost written book, meaning I have hired people, work for hire, to do it. I was involved in creating the concepts and often the beats for the stories,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not responsible for actually writing the 80,000 words. And if you look at it, by the way, if a person puts out enough words, if they can, I've done the numbers, they could make 100 grand a year with my company. Tell me how many people who don't have PhDs or high degree that can make 100 grand, and yet you
Right.
can, if you, and I have had some that make more than that, just writing. Often they don't because they don't put out the words necessary to do 8 hours a day of writing, so on and so forth. But so then you have ones where you'll see let's say Auburn Tempest. That's a pen name for Jenny Medore. Auburn Tempest and Michael Anderle. First, her name's first. She wrote the book. Jointly, we created the concept of what worked through discussions and everything else. And in that, all she has to do, quote unquote, is write the book. Everything else is handled with my company. The editing is handled. The beta readers are handled. The alpha readers are handled. The proofreading is handled. The cover is handled. She gets advice into it if she wants to. If she's like, y'all just handle the covers, we have the infrastructure to handle all the covers. The marketing team is 5 strong in the country, and that's not all of it. That's just the ones who deal with Facebook ads, Amazon ads, reporting, distribution, audio handled in our company. If people saw the audio catalogs that we promote every 3 months to all the majors that are going out there, they'd be shocked. Jenny's now her stuff is in German. All of that was handled. Jenny didn't have to do a thing to do with that. And so that's on the collaboration side. LMBPN publishing, which is the stuff, because there are legal reasons why, which we won't go in through here. And I realize we're taking so much of your time. We thank you for it, Patrick.
That's
but
okay.
If your name is on something, I'm just going to make a blatant statement and say you probably should own the IP, period. And Craig is the lawyer here. Judith, my wife, is also, I don't know Craig too. She's a JD, so that's not technically a lawyer. I don't know how that works out exactly, but she's Juris Doctorate in law. And if you don't own the IP, the copyright to that, you're allowing somebody else to have access to your name. And Michael Anderle, the name, is worth too much money to allow someone else to dick with it.
Sure.
So if Michael Anderle's involved, yeah, we own it. We're going to own that copyright. So even with some of my collaborators, I have to tell them up front, if you want to collaborate with me, my name's going to be on this. We're going to own the copyright. Now, if it's publishing, that's a different deal. You own the copyright. That means you're going to, we're publishing your books. Robin Cutler, I mentioned before, Thing Room Spark, she retired December of 2020. The second day of her retirement, I called her up and said, I know you're retired, Robin. I think there's a lot of opportunity. I'd like to see if you'd be willing to come be president of LMBPN Publishing, English Worldwide. And she took time, she took the job. So Robin Cutler is responsible for building a publishing company. Now you think about it, publishing itself, if you ignore the biggest of the big, a medium level publishing company maybe puts out 48 books a year for a month. I told her at the beginning of this year, said, oh no, you've done these other projects with us, Robin, but here's what I'd like to do with you for 2022. I want you up to 100 books a year. Not too many companies just go with the strike of a pen and go, I want you to move to become a 100 book a year publishing group within the company. And we are. She's on her queue right now is somewhere around 86, I think, books that she has slated. Some of them might fall off, some more might come on. But that's, what goes on. But if you see, so just for those people that understand, collaborators write the books. We have collaborators who every single one of those, where's their name? It's first. And I've done that from the beginning. It's always, if you see somebody's name on it before mine, that means they're the ones who did 50% and more of the book. Could have been 100%, quite frankly. If you see my name first, I did 50% or more of that book. If you see created by, that is, I guarantee you, a ghost written book.
Okay.
And so I've said that from stage. There are logical professional reasons to do this. I'm more than willing to have discussions with it. If someone wants to have a legitimate business discussion about it, I'm like, all hands on deck, because guess what? How many people can make $5,000 for their book? And yet that's what it's going to cost me to build a book.
Sure.
It generally costs me about $5,000. That includes $3,500 to $4,000, depending on how many words. Some of my books cost $9,000 to $10,000, but they're really long books. The biggest portion of my cost is always the writing, somebody writing it. I have had one time that I've engaged with someone who could do 260,000 words a month. That is, I'm like, you're talking the rarest of the rare breed. But that person could easily, and probably was, making multiple six figures that year with us. How many other authors can claim that? So, it's a bit obviously annoying to me when I'm like, I don't care if they know the truth. I tell the truth. It's when they don't get their facts right that it is really frustrating.
Well,
I stay away
Boyd
from
schooled him. Boyd totally
my
schooled
God.
her.
Thank you, Boyd.
And yes, like I said, he's a great guy. And
Yeah.
I think she was just angry to be angry, and she was just totally harshing out. I just want to smoke my cigar and drink my beer and just enjoy the ocean. Like, really, come on, you're really bringing me down there. But oh well, whatever. Okay, future for 20 books. What do you guys see?
I need to get going, Patrick.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I need to get going, Patrick. So I'm gonna bag out. Leave Michael alone.
Oh my gosh.
I'll
Hey,
answer
tell
the
you what.
question for you.
You're on your own
Put
now.
words
so
in your mouth.
Just plead the fifth.
Before you leave, Craig,
and you'll be fine.
Before you leave, Craig, where can people find you and your books?
Oh, just check out craigmartelle.com. That's CraigMartelle.com. And everything will be there, everything you need.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, Patrick. Thanks, Michael, for joining us today. And have a good day.
All right. All right, Michael, what's the future for 20 books?
I believe, right now there's one in June. There's another one in the Netherlands, both in June.
Yeah, these are the live conferences.
Yeah, those are the live conferences. So you're asking specifically for the Facebook group?
Well, both, I guess. Where do you see 20 books going?
Honestly, I don't see. There have been a large amount of implosions that have happened with writing groups over the last few years for various and sundry reasons. We typically weather one major issue every year that comes along. And what people need to understand about it is we're only about one thing. What do we do about writing the business of books? That's it. We do not care about the politics. We don't care about anything else that's going on. This is the one safe place where all Craig and I are going to allow is talking about the business of books. That's it. Don't be a dick.
And that's refreshing. From an outsider looking in, when I first joined, I'm just like, oh, that's nice. And with my group one of my caveats is we're not going to talk about politics or anything. There's 101 different Facebook groups or whatever where you can discuss all this. This is not it.
Yeah.
Totally get it.
So that's what we intend to continue is while we're helping people. And the beauty of it is, since we don't make anything, when people say I'm stampeding out and I'm taking half the people, all right. It can go down to zero. It will only help my business if we go down to zero, because it takes away time, money, effort. That my whole company, generally speaking, 80% of my company is at 20 books. So we shut down the company for that week. Sure. And because the people those that have come on board love to help. That's just who their personality is. It's kind of like it starts at the top. And so I look around and go, well, all of us like to do this. So we're all there. If you see Steve Campbell, who did the Author Biz Comp, he's there. Our editors are there. Our artists are there. And so, and maybe they're not representing LMBPN, but they're there.
Sure.
And so it's a situation that, we love to do that. And so, we'll see where society allows us to go. We're, like Craig said, we're about 60,000 people. It was never my intention to be that big. We've had many people try to say, you should monetize this. And we're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Because Craig and I, make our money from putting out books. That's what I don't personally have any nonfiction, period. And it's not because I have an altruistic side or anything. It is because I don't want to wake up at 2:00 in the morning with somebody saying, I paid $200 for this and I'm not successful. and feeling guilty because frankly it was something they did or didn't do themselves. I
Right.
just don't want to deal with that in my life.
Okay. Fair
So
enough. Fair enough. So, as far as LMBPN or you
mhm.
personally, you ever think about going into, or maybe you are writing screenplays, getting involved in movies, television, that kind of thing?
We have a few agreements in place. There's some, and by the way, the negotiations on movie stuff is stupid. Oh my goodness. Um, yeah, so we do have things that are in the works, but frankly, whenever you mess with those things, in the works could be next week or 10 years from now.
Sure.
And so I don't personally, it's not my big deal. I had to hire people to deal with movies, which Judith loves that stuff. I don't. So I never really pay. I'll tell you the truth. I got more excited when Graphic Audio, which is a company that does multicast narration projects, signed up Bethany Ann to do a multicast than I ever would get, I think, if someone said, "Hey, we're going to do a movie about Bethany Ann." I'd be like, I'd be excited, but I'm like, oh, no, all right, cool. That's it. It's just not my big, my big. Now, having said that, LMBPN is an entertainment company. We are absolutely doing things related to, we produce ebooks, we produce paperbacks, we produce hardbacks, we produce audio. We're looking at other audio products. We've been R&Ding 3D graphical video stuff for 5 years. The problem is that it's just recognizing that if you want to do that, and there's a lot of people doing movies right now, that takes away from your core business,
Sure.
your focus. And I'm too old to try to build this stuff again if I do something really stupid like unfocus from the main business. So I focus on the main business. We try these things on the side. If they are successful, fantastic, but I'm not going to risk what has now become hundreds of people's of livelihood. When you
Okay.
think about that, if you have one person who makes money from this entity, that's them plus their spouse plus their children, their community.
Right.
And so that sense of responsibility is on their shoulders. I didn't never want it, but it's here. So buck up.
Okay, gotcha. Now, in my Facebook group, there's a couple of questions. Ida
Mm-hmm.
Duke Writer asks, I
Mm-hmm.
wondered, do they feel like mini celebrities? This is you and Craig. How do you deal with mini fame within the community? I planned events in the past, but I just went to my first 20 books, and it seemed that Craig was always surrounded by people, and I'm an extrovert. And I went up to him and said hello. He was super nice, but oh my God, that seemed intense. Everybody wanted to talk to him. Does this affect how they interact with people? Do they worry about giving too much, too little, favoritism, or not really?
I can make some ideas only from speaking with Craig. Craig enjoys that. Craig definitely, because that's his goal of helping people, and
Yeah,
that's just
you can tell.
confirmation that he's, he's been helped. He does actually have someone who helps shadow him because he'll lose and forget. And he needs to be here, so he has a lot of that. Myself, I don't. You won't find me generally speaking in the spotlight. You won't find me even on 20 books very often at all. I'm very much kind of pulled back. So even at this year, even though I'm on stage, most people I've learned really don't know who I am. They could not tell you that I created 20 books down in Cabo San Lucas. They don't know the history. So they have, like Mike Who, which was a little weird this year,
Sure.
this most recent time. But if that's the way that I go, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
So yes, there are a few people that knew me back in the beginning when I was much more out in the whatever.
Hmm.
It's not as much. I have been noticed around the world a couple of times, like in Frankfurt, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, are you so and so?" It's nice, but I'll tell you right up front, as a teenager, I thought I wanted to be a rock star and be notified. As an older person, I realized that's not my personality. I'm happy enough not to be.
You know, one of the questions I had prepared for you was, do you want to be famous? Do you want to be a Stephen King or a James Patterson? Do you want that
Not
level of fame?
anymore. And not anymore.
Okay.
I thought I did. I absolutely. I don't know how many of us always dream of being that, but when you get a taste of it, and in the first time that I was at the 20 books, the first 400 person,
Yeah.
we were a lot closer, and so it was
Sure.
constant, and I was constantly on, and it was very tiring, and I was pretty ragged out by the end of the week, and I thought, you know what, it's not me. It's not who I want to become. So I started, even from then, started pulling back.
Okay. So, in your spare time, if you have any, do you still read? And
I
if
do read,
who
and
are
some
your
of it
favorite
is
authors?
John Conroe. I reread almost all his latest stuff, but I've reread his early stuff so many times, and I've been fortunate enough to have interviewed him. You have some of these dirty damn pleasures. It's like harem is not my forte, right? It's not something I would typically go to. But there was this series called Super Sale. It's just superheroes, or super sale on superheroes. I didn't realize it was a harem. I also didn't realize it was a lit RPG at the time. This is like 5 years ago when I started reading it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm reading it, and the concept was really kind of cool. And so I just kept on reading, and it wasn't until probably maybe the end of the first book. And these are long books. And then I'm like, wait a minute, all of his people that he's helped are all females. Sometimes you're a little slow on the uptake. So I have to admit that because of a comment in an author note that I was replying to, I went back and reread that. And I'm like, oh man, where's book 4?
Yes.
And so, there was some of that. And that Harkness, I think is the guy's name. I'd love to. Another one, John Ringo. I like some of his military stuff that he puts out. I know that there are a lot of people pissed off at his politics, but I'm like, you know what? I love these books before all of that became real. I'm not going to sit there and decide I don't like them with what's going on.
Right.
Some of our authors, are just fascinate me with what's going on. And then on the hobby, kind of a non-hobby side of things, I really like drones, but I can't fly worth shit. And
well, you have to be off the strip, I would imagine, if you're gonna be flying a drone around.
Yeah. Well, and so I had one of those big ones, those big quadruptors that are like foot and a half wide, and you can grab them at the bottom. And I had the money to buy it, and I flew it like 3 times, and then it stayed in the trunk of my car just in case I would ever get the chance to pull on the side of the road and go drive. And then I let my brother borrow it because I wasn't using it. He, how these things have return to base? Like if you kind of fuck up, you just hit the button, it returns it. They were on a sailboat.
Uh-oh.
And so they're out there flying it around.
Okay.
They lost connection, and it returned to base, which is God only knows where in the water it was. So that one, drone number 1. But they have new drones right now. The ones that you can actually put on your glasses, because I want to fly. I don't want to learn how to fly a plane, because that's a lot on overhead. But they have the new ones now that you can put on visors, and you fly, and you basically are looking at a camera straight ahead.
Really? Okay.
So I own a DJI 2, which is the really small one. It's under whatever the weight.
Yeah.
And it's really kind of cool. I don't fly it because I'm like, even when I'm up there, I'm not getting that feel. I want a feeling of flying. So now I'm tempted again to try to get back into drones for a 3rd time. And that's kind of where a little bit, but I love to read then. Oh, you know what another guilty pleasure is? Oh, this is so embarrassing. The Voice, right?
Yeah.
The TV show. Mm-hmm. And they always have whether or not they're, does anyone turn around their chair? Well, I cannot stand, once again, rejection and burst. I cannot stand when someone doesn't get a turn. It really grates on my nerves. And so I shy from that. But on the internet, on YouTube, you can see the Voice chair turns from every country in the world. There's got to be 15 countries that do YouTube. So even though I can't understand, or that plug this in, I don't understand what they're saying, but you can see the happiness, the emotion, the joy.
Okay.
And so a guilty pleasure for me sometimes, I might sit there for 5 hours and just go through these emotionally awesome moments in time when people get a turn or multi-turns. And so, yeah.
All right. My final question to you, Michael, would be, do you still want to retire in Cabo?
Yes. Now it's been qualified. We own 2 homes. We have one here in Vegas, which is the Henderson area, and we have the Cabo San Lucas finally came online August of last year.
Very good.
And we finally got it, but we can't seem to get down there. Damn it. We've been there a few months, but what happened is we came back from UAE and we were flying into Vegas, and then from Vegas we're going to go down to Cabo, and we kind of come into here and we just put our suitcases and everything here, and it was like, it was a home.
Right.
And it was a very emotional experience for us because we're like, we don't need this house. And maybe there will be a moment in our lives when we can't afford having 2 homes.
Sure.
But we can at the moment. and we've decided to have both. So I can't honestly say, but if you made me choose, assuming that health is good and everything else, I would say let me go down and live in Cabo. We'd sell this house, and then maybe eventually we'll sell that house or give it to the kids, which is, my hope. You always want to leave something to the next
Oh,
generation,
absolutely. Yes.
and then do Airbnbs around the world at that point.
Sweet. All right. Well, I think that's where we're going to end it. Where can people find more about you and your books?
LMBPN, London, Madrid, Barcelona, Paris, New York.com is where you'll find everything about, like, even myself and the company. If you really want, if you'll just, about me personally, I guess, Google me because I don't really have any website for Michael Anderle.
Okay.
I put everything into the company.
Gotcha. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on with us today.
Thank you very much, Patrick. It's been a pleasure.